This is part 2 in our series where we're examining one of the greatest blessings that God gives us here on earth, best friends. Best friends are gifts that make life better. And best friends are tools that make us better. In our previous lesson, we looked at the classic relationship in the Bible, best friend relationship between David and Jonathan. And we examined their relationship and saw some of the cool characteristics that defined that relationship and made it one for the ages. They were emotionally bonded. They were spiritually devoted, and they were unconditionally supported. And that relationship was fantastic. I hope you've been able to think about that and digest it a bit. And like all of these lessons, I hope you're not just like trying to get a little entertained during this half hour or so together, but you're really striving to put these things into practice. And so even think about David and Jonathan, and think, how did you try to put some of those things into practice this past week? The more we can digest it and implement it, the stronger our friendships are going to be by the end of the series. And that's why we're doing it in the first place, so we can all deepen our friendships with one another and broaden those friendships to as many other people as possible. Today, we're going to go into the next part in the series, number 2, and we're going to look at another great example of a friendship in the Bible. Again, the Bible is chock full of great examples and bad examples of friendships. Today, we're going to look at one that's an incredible example in the New Testament, and that is Jesus and Peter. It's kind of cool to look at a relationship with Jesus and Peter from a friendship perspective, not just a Lord and a follower perspective, but to look at them as best friends. So we're going to dive in and look at some examples of their relationship, look at a lot of scriptures, and then we're going to form it together into a few memorable points that I'm calling 3 BeAttitudes of friendship as revealed by Jesus and Peter. 3 Beatitudes of friendship. You'll see what I mean. The first Beatitude is this: be there. Be there. We're going to look at some examples. First in Mark chapter 1, verse 16. As Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." At once, they left their nets and followed him. Again, in chapter Mark, verse 3, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, and then he goes on to list the other 11. Another example, Mark 5, verse 37, he did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. This is when Jesus was going to raise this little girl from the dead. He's like, the rest of you, all my followers, and you other 9 disciples, you stay outside. I'm taking my closest 3. Jesus wasn't afraid of like showing favoritism to his closest disciples, but he takes Peter, James, and John so they could be with him and witness his first resurrection. Another example, Mark 9, verse 2. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up on a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. How cool is this? Again, all the other disciples, all the followers, the other 9 even, he's like, you guys stay at the bottom of the mountain. I just want to spend some time with Peter, James, and John. And then he like looks at them, he goes, you're not going to believe what you're going to see, man. This is going to be awesome. He takes them up on the mountain, and there he's just like, whoa, and some kind of like supernatural 3D effect thing took place, and he like becomes this white glowing figure, and he's speaking with Elijah and Moses, and they're like, whoa. He wanted them to witness it. He wanted them to be there with him when they saw his supernatural power and transfigured form. Another cool example, Mark 14 and verse 32. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said. Stay here and keep watch. This is a point when Jesus was the most neediest was the neediest he's ever been. It's right before he goes to the cross, and he says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. I'm troubled. I'm overwhelmed. I feel like I just want to die. I mean, he was like at wit's end, really. And then he looks to Peter, James, and John, his closest friends, and he says, hey man, can you guys just stay here and pray with me? I need you. Then, of course, what did they do? They went and fell asleep, okay? They didn't fulfill their part of the best friendship right there. But you think about these examples, all of them fall into this beatitude of friendships, to be there. Consider this. Jesus had unlimited love. He had unlimited knowledge, unlimited wisdom, unlimited grace, unlimited power. But even with all of that, he still needed one crucial ingredient to build his best friendships with, and that was time. He needed time to bond with them so they could really become best friends. If they couldn't be together, they could never reach that point in the relationship. So you read through the scriptures, they ate together, they prayed together, they served together, they spoke together, they talked together, they wept together, they walked together, they fished together, they boated together, they cooked together, they walked on water together, they dreamed together, planned together, learned together, struggled together. Man, these guys did everything together. They were there with one another. We think about it with our lives. In today's age of busyness, and man, it is very different than it was back then. When they would travel from one city to the next, they'd walk. When they just get together, they're talking face to face. They had to be there to build those relationships, and they built the relationships because they were there with one another. But in today's age of busyness of life, work pressures, kids' sports and school activities, computers, cell phones, social media, it is so difficult to just be there with each other and build our relationships. And so we wonder why often in church we're surrounded by hundreds of people who love God, people who love us, and we go, yeah, you're my brothers and sisters, but we can feel so empty and can feel so lonely. And we go, what's wrong? I'm surrounded by people, but I just don't feel the deep connection with very many. It all comes down to the little schedule choices that we make. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty comes on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man. That's what Proverbs says, and that's what happens in our friendships. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Every time you make a choice to not be there with somebody, there's a cost. You're not making a choice to build a deeper friendship. It all comes down to those little choices. If you want best friend relationships, you got to take charge of your schedules. You got to take charge of your schedules, and don't let your schedule take charge of you. If your schedule takes charge of you, you're going to be running and gunning, racing and chasing. You're going to do a lot of stuff, but you're going to feel all alone because you haven't invested in your best friends. Maybe your kids can't do all the sports and activities that they'd like to. Maybe you just limit them to one because you have a life too and you need best friends. Maybe you don't need to go to sleep as early as you like. Or maybe you can't sleep in as long as you'd like. Maybe you don't need to watch as much TV as you would like. Maybe you don't need to do that certain activity alone. Maybe you can do that with somebody else and bond with them as you do it. Practically, I want to encourage you, take opportunities. In the church, there are so many opportunities that we have to build our best friendships with one another. We have church, we have fellowships, we have what we call family groups. A lot of people watch these videos in their family groups where we're with one another in a home and with our kids there to just enjoy building friendships with one another. Devotionals, discipleship groups, discipleship times, retreats. A lot of times we think, I don't have time for that, don't have time for that. You're making a choice to not build best friends. You're making a choice to be lonely and to be all alone. And you're not going to like it when you get there. So take the opportunities that are put before you, but then you got to go beyond that. You got to make the opportunities as well. So you take the ones that are presented to you by the church and leadership, but then you got to make your own. You got to make opportunities to be there with your friends. Be creative and be consistent. Invite someone to join you for meals. Invite someone to go play some kind of game with you, to watch TV together, to go out and do something fun, to pray together, to go on the road, do a road trip together. Call them when you're on the road. I have this really fun trip. Okay, it's coming up in a couple weeks. This is our 10th annual one of these. We call it Boar Brothers. Okay, this is like the hunting, like primitive side in me. But we get a bunch of ministers and friends from within the church from all over the country. And we go to a place like Oklahoma. We've gone to Arkansas. We've gone to Colorado. This year we're going to Texas. And we go on a wild boar hunt with bows and arrows. And it's just like, I know it sounds kind of carnal, okay, and maybe I offend some people there, but it's awesome just to have some bro time. And we build fires. We hang out into the wee hours, just talking with each other, laughing together, just making memories. We make this opportunity, busy as we all are, because it builds those best friendships. What can you do to take and make those opportunities to be there? The next beatitude of Jesus and Peter's relationship, be real. John 15, I love this verse. Jesus says, I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I've called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Ooh, I love this one. It's kind of interesting. You know, he had called these people to be with him, but he says, hey, I no longer call you servants like you used to be, just followers, but now I call you friends. And the reason he said he could call them friends is because he says, everything I know, everything the Father told me, I've made known to you. I reveal everything to you. Mark 14, another example. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. Again, he took Peter, James, and John along with him. He began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He said to them, stay here and keep watch. We read this passage about being there with one another, but you can also see this other dimension, being real. Jesus was real. He's like the Son of God. He's the paragon of humanity. He's perfect. I mean, nobody is his equal, and yet he was secure enough to say, hey guys, I'm hurting. I need help. A little help? And he just opened up about his depression, his sorrows, his anxiety. He just opened up and shared with them. He was real. He was vulnerable. Another great example of this in Matthew chapter 16. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and then he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said, this shall never happen to you. Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. This is an incredible example of realness in a relationship. All of these examples are. They got real close because they got real with each other. You can't get real close if you don't get real first. They were honest, genuine, transparent, vulnerable, known. They shared their feelings and their fears. They shared their hearts and their hurts. They shared their defeats and their discouragements. They shared their joys and their jubilations. They revealed the good, the bad, and the ugly in themselves and each other. And so they were real with each other, so they got really close. And I've been working on this in my life. I consider myself someone who gets real with people, but I've seen in recent times that I have some real limitations of how real I want to get. I've seen it in a couple ways recently. One was with my migraines. I struggle with chronic migraines, and I've shared a lot about that in sermons and stuff like that. I feel like I'm pretty open with that. But one of the ways I cope with it is denial. Even though I'm aware of it, I honestly, it's not because I'm so stoic and tough. I just don't like to think about it. And so people ask me, hey, how are your migraines doing? I go, oh, pretty good. I'm okay. And I'm just used to saying that to everybody, even my wife, and to the elders, to staff members, just best friends. And what they feel from that is, oh, okay, he's doing okay. But but a lot of times I'm really not. But that's how I cope with it. I'm not trying to be deceitful. I just don't want to be like, woe is me, because then I just get all depressed and discouraged and I feel like, man, I'm doomed. I'll never make it. So I just kind of live in this denial. But as a result, I don't get known and they don't really know me. And then they can't help me and we get more distant. And so there was a time a little while ago that we were talking deep and I decided, you know what? I'm going to tell them what I really go through day to day or week to week in some of my struggles. And I just shared it. And it was like one of those tearful moments. It all kind of came out. And all of them just said, I had no idea. I had no idea. And I thought, come on, couldn't you figure it out? Well, how could they figure it out? I mean, I wasn't telling them. They only had what I was giving them. I wasn't being real, so I wasn't being known. So they weren't feeling close and weren't feeling trusted. And we just had this commitment right there that we're going to really have a goal with each other to know and to be known, that we'd really strive to be known. And I've been really trying just to be gut level honest. Where am I really at in my health and my challenges? But then I see it in another way that's come up. I don't like to think of myself as like a defensive leader. I know I've grown in it, but there's times I've seen my defensiveness, that some of my closest friends, most trusted allies, partners in the gospel have given me input on things. And I'm just kind of like, well, you didn't say that right, or no, that's not true. And even if I don't say that, I feel in my heart like I'm not being believed in. I'm not being valued. I'm under attack. When really, they're just trying to help me. They're trying to be real with me and help me be better. And I just get mad at myself. I go, doggone it, why am I struggling with this? Well, when I get defensive, I don't get their help. And then they don't feel close and we get distant. So I'm really working on whether it's divulging my physical struggles or listening to their input in my life. Let me just strive, God help me to be real. And the realer I get, the real closer that I get as well. How real are you in your friendships? Think about all your friendships. How real are you? How known are you? How much do you share the good, the bad, and the ugly? You look here at Jesus and Peter. First, Jesus says, who am I? Peter goes, I know. He had deep insight. You're the Son of God. You're awesome. Then Jesus goes, you're awesome. He builds him up and lifts him up. And then Peter responds or Jesus says, but I'm going to have to go to the cross. Peter goes, no, you're not going to have to do that. And then Peter goes, yes, I am. Jesus goes, yes, I am. And you're like Satan. Like they were so real back and forth. It was like complete transparency and honesty. They mixed it up. They didn't stuff their feelings. They shared them. I mean, Jesus called him Satan. I mean, they got real with each other. But that's what it takes to get real close. Realness breeds realness. You take the first step. Don't think about other people aren't being real with you. You take the first step. Be real. And then you'll start getting real close. The third beatitude we see here in the example of the friendship of Jesus and Peter, believe. Believe. That verse I just referenced. Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist. Others say Elijah. Still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked. Who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will never overcome it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So like some of the other verses, this passage shows dimensions of a few of these points. We looked at how they were being real in their conversation, but here I want to show how there is belief. They believed in one another and how that strengthened their relationship. Peter believed in Jesus. Jesus believed in Peter. The belief that prompted them to challenge each other. Peter believed in Jesus. You're the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And then Jesus responds to Peter, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, that I'm going to build my church on you, and all these things on this confession. Like, they believed in each other, but that belief prompted them to freely challenge each other. Hey man, you're Satan. Hey man, this shouldn't happen to you. They had that belief so they could be honest and challenged. That belief prompted them to forgive each other. There were times that Peter messed up royally, but Jesus forgave him because he believed in Peter. That belief prompted them to trust each other. There was a trust that came in their relationship because they believed in each other. So that belief was the foundation that produced the challenge, the forgiveness, the trust that made them best friends. I can remember a time many years ago in San Francisco when I first spent time with Frank Kim. I was very young in the ministry, back in 1988, I believe it was. And Frank was getting ready to go over to Japan, and he was going to lead the church in Japan and oversee all all of our churches over in Asia, an incredible calling. I'd only spent a few months with Frank in San Francisco, but man, I'd seen in him like a faith and a heart that I'd never seen in anyone before. And I remember just talking to him at this big going away party. He had the whole congregation at a big concert and picnic and a going away party. And I was saying goodbye. And I stopped him. I said, Frank, I've never told anybody this, but man, I'd follow you anywhere you go. And then he looked at me and he put his arm on me. It was like, I still remember it like it was yesterday. And he said, John, I believe in you. You're going to do great things for God. And then he just paused and he goes, did you hear me? You're going to do great things for God. And I was just like mesmerized. I was like, I heard you. It was like one of those moments, like this kumbaya moment, Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of moment. And man, I look over the years, how much that belief from Frank and to me has really helped form the foundation of this friendship. My belief in him, I'll follow you anywhere. His belief in me, you're going to do great things for God. We've had our bumps. We've had our challenges. But that foundation of belief is what our friendship can be built on. Best friends are one of the greatest blessings that God gives us on this earth. Best friends make life better, and best friends make us better. Let's learn from the example of Jesus and Peter. Remember these BeAttitudes: to be there, to be real, and to believe in one another. And if we put those things into practice in all of our relationships, we can deepen the relationships that with the best friends we already have. But we can also broaden our relationships to build best friends with more people.